Welcome, everybody. It is Business Monday. Thanks for coming back in. Thanks our friends this morning, early this afternoon, for talking about some of their business experiences over at Sophia and at Down East Coffee. Now, the main attraction, the money man, Gary Sasse. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. We've got more things to talk about than we can possibly slam into a half an hour. Let's go up to the State House. Gee, it's the out of session, but there seems to be a lot going up on at the General Assembly. Let's go through a couple of them. Last week, person we all know, campaign consultant Jeff Britt, who's worked on virtually everyone's campaign, depending on the election cycle. He's worked for Republicans, Democrats, moderates. He was indicted on money laundering tied to the 2016 campaign of Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello. Your thoughts?
Well, money laundering, federal is a felony, so it's a serious charge. It carries a long time in prison. A couple of thoughts. The Speaker wasn't indicted, wasn't charged. He's innocent. No one else on the Speaker's campaign staff was charged. So the couple of questions that are out there, which I have no clue of, no answer, but they're obvious questions. Was it a larger operation? What role did Jeff, play in that operation? That question has to be answered. Jeff came out swinging through his attorney, Bob Grenti, who was very capable.
Former U.S. attorney, was the U.S. attorney before Peter Nerona.
Yeah.
Peter Nerona is now obviously the Rhode Island Attorney General.
So a very capable attorney, and says if he goes down, other people will go down with him. So we'll just have to wait and see. The unfortunate part is it just puts another black cloud over the assembly, and because of the uncertainty, because of the controversy in a trial of this magnitude, the publicity the trial will get, doesn't make governing any easier. So I'm looking at it from a government perspective. The law will sort itself out. We'll find out if, in fact, Jeff was guilty or not, or if there were other people involved. That'll come out in the trial. There are competent people on both sides. I think I was impressed with the new Attorney General, because what hasn't been said is these kinds of questions, particularly about election law, what are sitting on Kilmartin's desk now still. And so I think that's good. I think we have an Attorney General that is more transparent on these matters and understands better the importance of integrity in the electoral process. We have one person charged, who's claiming that he was not alone, if at all, involved in this, has competent attorneys. So it'll all come out. It'll be an interesting Rhode Island soap opera.
But there's two issues that keep coming up that people keep telling us. Number one is where Britt was charged with taking $1,000 in cash, transferring it to a third party, who then wrote a check to this coordinated account run for a mailer by Shauna Lawton endorsing Nick Mattiello. Where did Jeff Britt get the $1,000? What was the source of that $1,000? The second aspect that folks keep raising to us is who okayed it, right? For those who've worked on campaigns, usually people don't unilaterally put together these spheres. They're not going to say, oh, I think independently I'm going to go connect two people and go outreach to a previous candidate who lost in the primary and deliver them money. So those are probably the two biggest questions that are out there that I'm sure Jeff Britt knows the answer to, and the Attorney General wants to know the answer to.
Well, we'll see, and so the trial will go forward. No reason to second guess or to make any accusations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the trial will go forward, but there is a political aspect to it, and the political aspect is how do we govern and what kind of decisions are made with this kind of noise, and I'm concerned about, certainly about the trial and making sure the right people were punished, for what apparently was a violation of campaign finance laws and money laundering. But at the same time, I'm interested in making wise public policy, and it just becomes harder when this kind of thing's in your background with the noise.
So two of the last three speakers who left office left under a cloud. Go back to the third one, John Harwood. There was controversy in his waning months. and his colleagues asked him to step aside, which he did, and that led to Bill Murphy. Bill Murphy stepped aside without any specific controversies during his transition to Gordon Fox. Gordon Fox, law enforcement, entered his office, his State House office, and I believe his home, and took in documents. By the end of that weekend, his colleagues had asked him to step down and had elected Nick Mattiello. So in none of those cases had actually anyone been convicted or charged. Do you see, what dynamics do you see? Do you see that it's just difficult to govern in when there's questions?
Oh, it's obvious because you just have so much energy, and certainly that has to be occupying your mind and your attention, so it takes away from your day job. At the same time, it makes it more difficult to lead because there may be factions or individuals in a legislative body who are looking to what's in their best interest to advance, and how that affects one's fortune in the future, how it affects discipline and getting together and whipping the House in order to pass legislation. So it makes the process of legislating more difficult, and that's a concern. You point out that in the last 10 years we've had 3 speakers that have had issues, and that certainly is something that you wish you could avoid. At the same time, even though they've had issues, there were certain things that the legislature was able to do. It passed budgets on time, it cut taxes, it dealt with a bunch of issues, other issues it didn't deal with. But it's just something that you don't want. You don't need it.
Yeah.
And it's not in anybody's best interest.
It was a bad week for Rhode Island. Governor Raimondo got ranked, and I think unfairly, the least popular governor in the United States. I don't know what popularity matters, but she's certainly not the worst governor out of 50 governors, and she's had some significant successes, and she's had some, UHIP and DCYF. Are certainly things that I think she wishes she could have redos on, but you don't get redos. What's your take on that?
Well, I have to make one other observation before I give you your answer to the question. The 10 governors that were rated as the most effective, they all were Republicans.
They were all Republicans.
You mentioned that, and one, our neighbor, who was rated #1, and one very close to us in Maryland was rated in the top 10. So I'll let that stand on its own. I won't go any further with that type of commentary. And seriously, I think I think 40 is the new 50.
Yeah.
Because of social media and because of factionalization. In the past, with less attention, ratings were higher, and so I think there's been a deflation in the ratings. Having said that, it affects everybody. And to be, lowest, does raise some questions. I think it raises another interesting political question as well. If Governor Raimondo is the least effective governor in the country, how come she won overwhelmingly?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 of the 3 times she's run statewide, she's won, with significant pluralities.
But the truth is the matter of if you're playing the Sisters of Mercy and you're Notre Dame, you're going to score a few touchdowns.
Yeah. She's got roughly 3 years left. She's now been deemed the least popular governor. How does she transform her relationship with Rhode Islanders over the next 3 years? I'll give you one insight. We receive every day from the governor of Massachusetts press office their daily public schedule. So this isn't all their meetings, but it's all the meetings that the press have availability to. And I would say on Charlie Baker's daily schedule, there's anywhere from 2 public events to 5 or 6 on a very busy day. In Governor Raimondo, we get 1 or 2 weekly daily schedules for the week. And in most cases, there's no more than 3 or 4 events in the entire week. Some weeks there's only 2 events. So Baker is having public events with the media and the public 5 times as much on average as Governor Raimondo is. Your thoughts?
Well, I've worked for governors, and we had communications people that insisted that the governor's schedule, be out there, and out there every day. There were some meetings that were not on the schedule, but they
Right,
were
right, plenty.
plenty of confidential nature that
Right.
you need to let everybody know that. I think the governor, and it's late. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but in this day and age, is more transparent, the more accountable you can be, the more effective you're going to be as governor. The other issue that the governor has, and it's both a blessing and a curse, she's very well connected out of state, and that deals with certain kinds of relationships which sometimes people don't see how it affects the quality of their life or the quality of government. And that's something, and that gets back to the communication, how you manage it, because those contacts are not all necessarily bad for the state. They could be helpful to the state, but they're not viewed that way. The other issue, and this is what I don't think this administration has done a particularly good job at, is to answer one basic question. What is the administration doing to make life better for your family? And there have been certain things that could be deemed positive, but the dots aren't connected. So, for example, regardless of what you think about free tuition at the community college, that could be of help to certain families in the state. There are other things as well that the administration does that could serve to make life better. But when you step back and try to connect those dots, we have school systems in the state that are awful. And it's not just Providence.
No, it's not.
There are other districts as well. And we're going to have a conference at Bryant that talks about that. So how am I making schools better for kids? What am I doing about the potholes in the street? What about job protection? We've grown jobs, but you look at where those jobs have grown and the quality and what our job employment growth is compared to other states, not as strong. And so, while there have been programs that have been aimed at helping the people of Rhode Island, they've not done a very good job of communicating how.
But listen, everybody doesn't need to be loved, and I'm not sure Gina Raimondo's number one goal is to be loved, clearly. But at the end of serving as 4 years of general treasurer and 8 years as governor of the state of Rhode Island, I assume she wants to have some legacy and be remembered for doing positive things. But some component of whether you do them or don't do them is to communicate them.
Well, I think it's a big issue.
And I got to tell you, I don't know when the last time, other than some ceremonial thing, was we got a meaningful press release out of that office.
When was there a meaningful press conference?
Months, maybe before the election. The last time. No, that's not true. Takeover of Providence Schools. That was probably the last. That was in June.
2 months ago.
4 months ago.
4 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be helpful and nice to have a scheduled press conference, let's say once a month, once every 2 weeks? Wouldn't it be nice to use our website more effectively?
Right.
In looking at issues, so you could talk about communications. On the other hand, when you do things, sometimes they're not popular but necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for example, the work she did as treasurer with pension reform. Well, the unions weren't going to jump up and down and think that was the best thing that she did. But as a taxpayer, I look at pension reform and think there's probably more good than bad done in that program. That's not necessarily going to make you popular. But I think there are things that are not being addressed. And there's been a tin area, UHIP. So most needy people in the state suffer because of administrative incompetence. There's no other way to define that. A lot of talk about education programs, but they're kind of boutique programs. Yeah, she says she's put computers in schools, and she talks about pre-kindergarten. Good programs. No one would be objecting to those. But how does that make our education system better?
Right.
And so the thing seems to be more looking at the trees than the forest. I think that's part of the problem.
Wasn't on our agreed upon schedule, but Mitt Romney has an alter ego, Pietro. What is the last name?
Del Cardo.
Del Monaco.
As a state.
I don't know.
Right.
Regardless, not only does he have an alter ego Twitter account, but he unveils it to a reporter of his own volition, and then another reporter tracks down what the actual account is. And the tweets and retweets and likes are fairly embarrassing. He seems to like things that talk about Mitt Romney. and he doesn't like things that have to do with President Trump. What is going through his mind?
Yes, Mitt Romney.
I mean, this is a man who came close to winning the presidency of the United States, was competitive, led polls at certain points in time, thought to be a potential presidential candidate in the future, led the Olympic Committee, was governor of Massachusetts, is now a senator from Utah, was head of one of the biggest private equity funds in the country. What? Got any insights into this? You're a leader. You're a top-ranked leader in the Republican Party.
I've had to deal with that for 2-3 weeks too.
Do you have any alter ego Twitter handles that you want to disclose here today?
Not that I want to disclose. That's a keyword. But I don't know. He's got quirks. But that shouldn't take away from his accomplishments that you pointed out in both the private and the public sectors. And he's got courage. He's one of the few Republicans that are pointing out some of the limitations of our leader. And so, yes, he has some quirks. But Mitt Romney, and this happens a lot of times to people after they've won and lost for high office. You become more comfortable. You become less guarded. He's kind of.
Well, it wasn't unguarded. It was secret.
Well, but it came out. It didn't come out before. It came out now. He's comfortable. He's like the Turner Classic Music movie station of politics.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Let's jump to Washington, D.C., the impeachment process. We're now in, I think, functional week 3 since the Democrats have really pressed the gas. There's some pushback by leading members of the media who are starting to say, why is all this taking place in secret? It only adds to the divisiveness of what's now emerging in our country.
Well, some of it has to take place in secret because it's not that dissimilar to depositions before a trial. So if you were suing me and I had to give my deposition in public that you could know what my defense was or what my sins were, that would be a problem. So before anybody gets too impatient and jumps to that conclusion, there will have to be hearings. This information will have to come out. But at the same time, in putting together the case, you have to protect the integrity, and you can't put people in jeopardy. So I don't get too excited about that. I think, I look at it politically in what's happening, with it right now, and there's a lot of data and a lot of discussion that I think is of some interest. There's certain aspects of Trump's base that the needle hasn't moved more than a point or two. And I'm a little surprised, but the evangelicals have not moved at all. They're still solid there, even though the Syrian episode has created problems for the Middle East. People that are religious watchers of Fox News, the needle hasn't moved very far on them either. So they're still very much in the president's corner, and probably still part of the group that would agree that if the president went out on Madison Avenue and shot somebody, no one would notice. And so that those parts of his base haven't moved. That's a small part of the country, but it's still his base, and they're very strong. But something else is happening, and it's what's happening in Washington with Republicans that's not fully noticed yet. The president is facing, at this point, increased private and public scrutiny from elected Republicans who are in the Congress, and the last week of craziness, and there's no other way to describe it. The G7 at the Doral, Ukraine with his acting. Everybody acts in the Trump administration. No one has a permanent job.
Right.
But with his acting, chief of staff going out and admitting it was a quid pro quo, and then explaining 2 days later on I think on Fox that it wasn't a quid pro quo. The fallout with Syria, having Mike Pence come up with like Neville Chamberlain in 1938 waving a piece of paper that meant nothing. Peace in our times, we got a ceasefire. And meanwhile, the Turks, no one told the Turks, they kept on marching through. The tariffs and the impact it's having is.
Will enough Republicans begin to splinter off to make the difference, both not only in, he's going to get impeached in the House, regardless if a single Republican votes for it, But will the country begin to significantly lose confidence,
Well,
more so than already,
Well, the country has those.
if enough Republicans
Well, let me tell you
begin to stand
what's
stand up
happening
to the
in
president?
second to do with Republicans because things just you don't just put the plug in and the coffee gets hot. You have to perk the coffee. Republicans that I speak to are finding it harder and harder to justify blanket support. And I use the word blanket support because in the past you kept quiet and at least if you didn't believe it, you supported it. But now they can't do that anymore. So the blanket support is gone. And the story of increasing weakness in the Senate is happening. And it's happening not because of anything that Trump has done, because the polling data is very clear right now. And in certain states, there's better than a 50% chance that the Republicans will lose control of the Senate. And the states where there are concerns, Arizona,
Yeah.
Iowa, Maine, North Carolina. I think Colorado's gone. It's too early to say.
Yeah.
But Colorado, possibly they can pick up Alabama. Don't know that, but that's possible. But with 53 Republicans and you lose 4 seats, you've lost control of the Senate.
But that doesn't get you in a trial a
No.
vote to remove the president from
But see,
office.
that's what we don't know yet. There are probably 6 or 7 Republicans that will go unnamed that would have a very open mind towards conviction of impeachment. It still leaves you about 12 short. And what will influence the other 12 is what I've just said. If it looks like they will lose control of the Senate, if it looks like a lot of their members are going down, their first loyalty is not going to be to Donald Trump. Their first loyalty is going to be to the Senate. We don't know where that's going. We do know those 5 states I've mentioned. We do have polling data. We do have unease. We do know the president's actions are coming under greater scrutiny. So it's very much a work in progress. But just to take a cavalier position, oh, you'll never get 20. Well, things are very fluid. On the other hand, if it was held today, the people that bookmakers on this kind of thing would say this is about a 20% chance. That means there's an 80% chance that you won't. But a month ago, there wasn't a 20% chance.
John Kasich, who you were the state chairman for his
I
presidential,
was also a policy advisor to Kasich.
came out and called for the president's impeachment.
Yes, 2 weeks after I did, I want to point
2
out.
weeks after you did. Marco Rubio, though, another person that you have a
I've worked with.
significant advisory role with, came out and defended the Doral decision and then got bit in the behind for being loyal to the president.
Well, I don't want to get defensive about Marco, but I will point out a few things. That the G7 would have been in the county which he lives, he had more courage than the governor of Florida. He said, "Yeah, bring him down, y'all come." So that certainly was.
Is Marco Rubio one of the key United States senators who will ultimately determine the president's fate?
I don't know because you have to look at the state. That's the point I was trying to make. You have to look at the state, the Senate is.
So let me ask you a question. You focused on the control of the Senate, being a good Republican. What about the country? Is the country involved in this?
Yes.
Are there members of Congress who are Republicans who are saying, you know what, this is bigger than control of the Senate, it's bigger than Mitch McConnell, it's bigger than the Republican Party, this is just wrong?
Well,
Or the president's, Democrats are wrong.
Well, I'll point out that until they found the tapes, the Republicans were doing the same with Nixon, and during the whole Clinton thing, Democrats were doing the same with Clinton.
Till the blue dress, I believe,
Yeah,
was the instigation.
So, there's a natural ebb and flow in politics. But what I'm telling you is, what they're saying in private and they're saying in public may not always be the same things, but the number of things the president has done that are indefensible is causing them to go under a microscope. And more people have asked the question you've asked. I am sitting and making a pragmatic kind of political judgment, is that all politics is local. When they see their Senate seats are threatened, their loyalty is, they'll get their attention. Certainly, they're thinking about the country, they're different states. I think a key linchpin in this is going to be Senator Burr of North Carolina. There are senators who are in strategic positions, who are in purple states, that will act. Burr's co-chair of the Intelligence Committee
Right.
with Mark Warner. He's going to be critically important in this process. The senators I mentioned in states that are running behind right now, they're going to look at the situation in their state, may react differently. They're going to be so there's no one answer.
Let's jump over the aisle. Which Democrat is just beginning to create any momentum towards capturing the nomination of the Democratic Party?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy because I don't know, and I look at
You're the money man.
Yeah, I'm the money man, but my ideology, my politics get in the way. I think the best thing Trump has going for him right now is the possibility of the Democrats nominating somebody that's more to left than is the country. But the Democrats have a lot of good candidates that are not that way. I'm a big fan of Amy Klobuchar. She's a liberal Democrat. I think the jury's still out on Mayor Pete. But the latest polls have him running third in Iowa. We've got a very strong organization. I think people that have no less like chance Senator Bennett in Colorado. The Democrats are going to have Biden. The Democrats are going to have to sort this out. The closer the Democrats come to nominating somebody that's viewed as a centrist, a left of center centrist, not a right of center centrist, the better chance they have to win.
Can they win with an Elizabeth Warren or a Bernie Sanders?
I don't know. I think with Sanders' the answer is no. With Elizabeth Warren, the jury is still out on that. If you look at polls today, they're all beating Trump. But those national polls don't mean anything. You have to look on a state-by-state basis. And when you look at it on a state-by-state basis, it's a jump ball. I'll give you an example. In the key states that Trump carried by 70.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are the three I'm thinking
Yeah.
about. Trump's support among women is going, down. His support among independents is going down. And if Hillary had just cut in each state the amount he wanted independents in half, I think it was 11% in one state and 4% in another state. He won the independents. If those were cut in half, there'd be a Democrat president today. And so you don't know, and I don't know how a person like Elizabeth Warren, will play to those people. But it's not a macro game; it's a micro game of honing in on who you can get out to vote and what their strengths are. Now, the other side of the coin, which really makes it very difficult for a Democrat like Warren or Sanders, is the Trump political machine is raising money quicker than you can count it.
Yeah.
They've raised about at least 125 million. They're very well organized. Their technology, I don't know. I haven't seen it. No one's going to show me their technology, but it's supposed to be very good in terms of identifying their voting base and getting them out. So that's going to be a real challenge if the Democrat candidate is not viewed as more of a centrist. But you look at everything that's happened. There's an unease in this country right now. I won't call it a Trump fatigue, but the drama of the hour.
Right.
I think.
Do you think people even pay attention? Is it just insiders that pay attention to the drama, and the rest of the people are just trying to live their lives?
I think
that there's so much overload. I
think there's a lot of overload. I think sometimes people are concerned about whether their daughter's soccer team wins or their son's football team wins, or how they're getting along with their boss at work, and whether the wife is.
Listen, I get along great with the money man. That's all I know.
You're lucky.
Money man, thank you.
My pleasure.
This was insightful. Lots of issues going on. We will see you back next Monday. The way last week went, the bad news was the governor's unpopularity, this problem with the speaker. The good news for the Rhode Island brand was Jennifer Lawrence holding her wedding here in Newport, and bringing in many of the top stars in music and entertainment into Rhode Island. Rhode Island was splashed across virtually every single news organization in the world. That's pretty good for business around here.
Every little bit helps.
Every little bit helps. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. I believe Kate Nagel has Jennifer Lawless, who I'm sure will have lots to say about Mitt Romney's alter Twitter ego. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you tomorrow.